look, we just heard about you as a mentor as well as a leader. And you know, this room is, we've got in the room some students who are scholarship students to the World Affairs Council. And what they'll tell you is they're entering their careers. They're not only looking for a career in which they'll learn and they'll grow, they're also looking for a career in which they'll make a difference, a positive social difference. Is there a space for that? Is there an important space for that in the private sector, and particularly in the digital economy?
Oh, Jane, absolutely. I mean, and this, you know, this award that I'm accepting tonight is in many ways emblematic of the reemergence of purpose as an organizing function for business, I think. And purpose is something that attracts talent. Purpose is something that gives us an unending sense of commitment, of resilience, of endurance. And I think Pierre Midyar had a deep sense of purpose when he founded eBay.
What did he say to you when you first met?
Well, it was an interesting story. I was working at Bain at the time, and I got a phone call from Meg Whitman, who I'd worked with at Bain 20 years earlier. And this was fall 2004. And at the time, eBay was the hottest company on earth. And Meg called me and said, John, I don't have a successor. Why don't you come in, work for me for a couple of years, and take over? And I was like, Meg, eBay's the cat's meow in society right now. eBay is the darling of Wall Street. eBay is the darling of the media. eBay is the coolest thing on earth. And I'm many things, but I'm not cool. And my kids will attest to that. And so I said, that's just not me. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm interested in. And she said, well, why don't you just take an hour and meet Pierre Midyar, our founder? And so I was curious. And so I said, all right, I'd never met a big internet founder. And so I'll never forget meeting Pierre in San Jose on a rainy day in November 2004. And I was sort of expecting a larger-than-life, you know, here he is, the founder of one of the greatest internet companies ever. And I'm expecting this charismatic guy, maybe a little bit arrogant. And you met Pierre. So I walk into this small conference room, and Pierre sitting there very calmly. He has that amazing just sense of presence, right? Quiet presence. And so we have a conversation. And I said, so Pierre, how do you define success? And he didn't talk about growth rates. He didn't talk about share price. He didn't talk about eBay's fame. He said two things. He said, one, John, I believe eBay is a source of peace in the world. And he said, if you think about all throughout history and civilization, commerce is how people have come together. Commerce is a common language for people all over the world, right? The China silk trade, people have different traditions. He said, if you take a Israeli jeweler and a Palestinian consumer, in the real world, they hate each other, even though they'd never met. They couldn't stand across the table from one another because of hundreds of years of history. He said online at eBay, if that Israeli jeweler sells a watch on eBay to a Palestinian buyer, the Palestinian buyer buys it. The jeweler gets his money, has a customer. The buyer gets a watch at a great deal. They like each other. He said commerce can be the foundation for peace in our world. And the internet allows people all over the world to connect with one another.
So both, I assume that Pam and Midyar were surfing at the time, because there's a couple, they have that interest as well.
They're amazing.
And they're remarkable philanthropists. They are all about social impact. That's what matters to them. So let's just talk a little bit about that and the role of the digital economy in it. As you look at the global economy right now, it is creating tremendous wealth, no question. But it's also exacerbating disparities in wealth and income and in opportunity. So what is the role of micro-business and small businesses in sort of righting that wrong and somehow helping to grow a middle class? And what's the role of the digital economy in that?
Well, I think the digital economy allows equal opportunity. And it allows people all over the world to utilize their talents, whether it's utilizing their talents as an eBay seller, utilizing their talents as an Airbnb host, utilizing their talents as a TaskRabbit. What do you call them, Leah? TaskRabbit? Taskers. I mean, creative people have a chance to contribute. Creative people have a chance to earn a living. Creative people have a chance to engage. And so I think it's not guaranteeing anything for anyone, but for someone that's got initiative, that's got drive, and it doesn't matter where you live, right? You can have eBay. We have 90% of our sellers. We have 25 million sellers around the world, 90% export. Yeah. We call our sellers micro multinationals. So this is an individual in Des Moines, Iowa, that's reaching customers in Seoul, Korea, or in Buenos Aires. And they have to be creative, they have to be entrepreneurial, they have to work hard, but they have a chance to both have an impact in society and to earn a living.
So a lot of these people can be in very remote locations, right? They can be, and a lot of them are women. I know Premal Shah is here from Kiva, and he would argue, give a woman a loan, give the woman their first start in an enterprise, and the social benefit reaches far beyond that woman. To what extent is eBay reaching sellers like that, individuals in remote locations, without access to markets normally?
Oh, that's the core of eBay. I mean, that's the core of eBay. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter what your background is, what your ethnicity is, what your sex is. If you have entrepreneurial drive and you have a product or a service you want to sell to people all over the world, you have a chance to do it.
But at the same time, they're having real local impact. I mean, they're hiring local people. They're
absolutely
they're
creating jobs.
Yeah.
You know, I had an interesting experience my first year at eBay. We used to have something called eBay Live, where we brought together 15,000 eBay sellers from all over the world. And it was almost a celebration fest. And these are people that community, right? They're coming together. They're individuals. They have their own businesses. And this is their chance to come together and commune with one another. And one of the traditions on the last night was we'd get a band to play. And this was often the top social event of many of these people's years, because they were running businesses out of their homes, out of their garages. And the eBay employees used to line the hallway, and the sellers would start lining up for hours in advance to come into the big ballroom to see the band, to have the closing night party. And our employees would line up, and as they start coming in, we clap. We had called it the clapping line. We had probably 800 employees clapping. And I'll never forget those doors opening up. They've been lining up for 3 or 4 hours. And I'll tell you, Jane, I would say the first 300 to 400 of those sellers were in wheelchairs. Because, think about it, what all the sellers had done is they let the sellers in wheelchairs get to the front of the line. And you think about it in the physical world, again, you talk about the Israeli-Palestinian, people would have a perception. There would be limitations of how someone would think about someone that may have a physical handicap. And yet online, on eBay, they're equal. Mm-hmm. They provide great service, they provide great items for customers, and they provide great opportunity. And so I think this notion of the digital economy providing opportunity, blind to some of the stereotypes that we've had for years, hundreds of years, is something that creates a sense of real humanity back in commerce.
Now, as you're enabling these entrepreneurs to sell, you're connecting them to markets. Are there training programs for them? Do they train each other? How do they learn to be effective online sellers, retailers?
You know, it's so interesting because I think every time the company has tried to do that, we failed. And when we enabled the sellers to train one another, it succeeds. And it's this notion, Pierre's notion, that people are basically good. You would think, oh, one seller's training their competition. But that's not how they understand it. They come together, they create that sense of community, they train each other, they help each other. They take great pride in each other's success. And I think the same thing's happening in many of the sharing economy companies, where you're seeing it's bringing out the best in humans, mm-hmm. the best in human nature.
And one of the biggest problems is always access to capital when you're starting a small business, a micro business. What is eBay's role as a potential lender or a way of connecting these folks to capital?
Well, as you know, it's one of the biggest problems a small business has is small businesses got left behind in the financial crisis in 2008. I mean, I don't know how many small businessmen and small businesswomen there are here in the room tonight, but it's very hard to get a loan. And frankly, small eBay and PayPal sellers have pushed us at PayPal to create a new product, which we have now, PayPal Working Capital, where we create small loans to our sellers, our merchants. And here are the terms of it. It's a simple interest rate, and you only pay it back when you sell your inventory. So you're never stuck when you can't repay the loan. The loan is repaid by your future sales, and just a small portion of your future sales. And we're blessed because we have a lot of data around these small sellers, both eBay data, PayPal data, that allows us to provide those working capital loans.
Well, that's what I was going to say. What about the folks who have no credit history or have a bad credit history from way back when that's following them through their lives? How do you establish whether they're eligible for a loan?
Well, we do it through our data, so our historical sellers. For someone that's brand new in that, that's where that mix of, again, Matt Bannock from Amidiar Foundation, or Amidiar Network is up there, and there are a lot of organizations that are providing what we talked about earlier tonight, the social entrepreneurism, the social loan, if you will, and that often gets someone started off early on before they build a track record. But again, if you're an aspiring creative entrepreneur in today's world, you can get capital to get started. May not be a lot, and you got to build success.
Well, it's that first loan. It's that first loan if you don't have a credit history, and that's where I think eBay can make one of the ways in which you have huge impact. One of the other characteristics of this economy is that the workforce is incredibly mobile.
Yes.
And those of us who think about foreign policy worry about the sort of rapid urbanization of sort of restless young men coming to the cities in search of a job, in search of a better life. They don't always have a sense of connection, right? They don't, there they are kind of, in an unknown city, in search of a job, in search of a place to live, in search of colleagues and friends. eBay owns companies that are really the leading classified ads in many of these societies, in Europe and well beyond. Is this a way in which people like that who feel unconnected can get connected? Absolutely.
And I think we're hitting again, Pierre's very prophetic about this, our founder. He feels passionately. We talked about connected commerce. And we're really, Pierre would describe we're at a crossroads on which way technology can go. If you look at the world of retail, what technology's done in the last 25 years, you could argue that technology has dehumanized retail. You have supply chains, you have scale, you have automation, you have big box retailers where you have someone that's being behind a cash register that doesn't know you and you don't know them. And it's kind of dehumanized. It's where 40 years ago you walk along Main Street and people knew your name. What technology is enabling, whether it's through eBay or whether it's through many of the sharing economy companies here today, is the rehumanization. You're buying from an individual, not from a nameless corporation. You're having the chance to connect with them. Technology is enabling the capacity to get personalized service again, so that there's no reason why when I walk into the Starbucks, we have a Starbucks in our lobby at both eBay and PayPal. Now, I walk in and my phone, without it leaving my pocket, alerts them that I'm here, and my picture shows up on the cash register. And a barista who's never met me says, "Hey, John, would you like the usual?" Right? That's a sense of connection. That's a sense of personalized service. So technology is enabling the reconnection of people.
You are.
I choose that. So for those of you who think that's spooky, I saw the murmuring. By the way, the people under 40 think it's really cool. And those of us that are over 40 think that's weird. But it's in all seriousness, I can then on my phone say, I want to enable that personalized experience in certain places, and I don't in other places. And again, technology is getting to I think technology, Jane's getting to a place where it can it can build a more positive sense of connection and provide privacy and control.
Yeah. See, I was smiling because, you know, you are the CEO of eBay. And,
Yeah.
and so it just may be that this barista.
No, trust me. Trust me. No, not in our company.
So trust is a huge issue. I've heard Brian Chesky talk about this in other settings. The notion that, with the Airbnb model, the notion that somebody you've never met before is going to stay in your home, stay in your guest room, and that this is, you know, happening all across the country, and in fact all across the world, says a lot about the opportunity to kind of retain, go back to that more trusting world that those of us who are older than Brian, you know, felt we used to have and don't have now. So it's a really, it is an important issue. I wanted to talk a little bit about sustainability. I'm sorry.
Can I just come back
Yeah.
on that? Because again, this is where technology, the way you built trust 500 years ago, or whenever, is your local tribe, your local community. People knew one another. One of the pieces of secret sauce behind eBay was the feedback system, right? Where people provided feedback on one another. And that was one of Pierre's real innovations. And so the reason an Airbnb can work is I can choose to allow someone to come into my home based on their feedback, or I can choose which homes that I want to stay in based on feedback. And so same thing with Uber, or same thing with Lyft, same thing with many of the sharing economy companies. So the technology allows you to get, in essence, word of mouth reference, the equivalent of it, from people you trust. And people begin to build reputations. And they know if they aren't trustworthy, they'll spiral down. It's so interesting to watch eBay sellers that deliver great service and their sales go up. Yeah. And if they don't, their feedback, it's very transparent. Everyone can read the reviews, and their feedback goes down, and trust goes down. And Pierre had that insight that if we put enough transparency out there, that it brings out the good part of people, and trust can build. And it's just great to see that replicated so many places now around the world, and so many different businesses taking advantage of that core innovation he had.
You know, the most powerful story I've heard about Lyft came from a Lyft driver. I was in Washington and I needed a quick ride, and I jumped into it, you know, called up Lyft and got into the car and asked the guy, who was normally a taxi driver, that was the rest of his job, I asked him what he thought of Lyft. I was thinking he would say, oh, it's terrible, it's driving out the taxi industry. You know, I was expecting that kind of complaint. And he said, I'm ashamed to say this, but when I was in my taxi on a Saturday night, at around midnight, I'd see a young man hailing for a cab, often with a minority background. I would pause before picking him up. Now I pick up everyone because they've shared their information on Lyft. They know my information. This is an honest, you know, this is somebody on whom I can rely. And I no longer look with suspicion at people who don't look at me. And that was an amazingly powerful story to me about the rekindling of trust. Let me just say a word about, ask about PayPal for a second, because a big piece of this, a huge enabler, is this ability to transfer money without going through a middleman, without risking corruption, frankly. I mean, you know it's going to where you mean to go. Tsitsi Messi was here, and she and her husband started a company called Econet, which is the big mobile company in Africa, but they've started EcoCash very much on the same model. And a thing that I often think about, because I think about the developing world, John, is there are places where you don't just want that for convenience. You want that for safety, for security. You don't want to have a physical wallet. You'd rather have an electronic wallet. As you think about the impacts of PayPal, what are the most powerful aspects of it in your view?
Well, what PayPal's enabled is millions of small micro businesses to be in business, because a small micro business can't get a credit card account. That's one problem they have. Second, if we're here in San Francisco and you have a small micro business in anywhere else in the world and you've never heard of them, the likelihood you're going to send them money and trust it is not high. And what PayPal's enabled is trust. That small micro business can accept money and then extend the trust of PayPal so that buyers all over the world are willing to risk their money, send their money to someone they've never seen, and know that they're safe and secure. And so and again, that builds on itself. The brand has built on itself that notion of trust. And we do. We guarantee both sides of the transaction. Any buyer has a problem, they get their money back. Any seller has a problem, they get their money. And so PayPal's been blessed by building that successful, virtuous cycle around trust.
Now, we often refer to the sustainable consumption, the whole idea of never letting an asset go to waste. It's what my mother calls the waste not, want not economy. But that's very much what it is. On the question of sustainability, what are the various ways in which eBay is kind of walking the talk? I think about your, not only your core business model, but even your headquarters. So say a word about that.
Well, first of all, just as you said, the core business model, there's over $100 billion of used items or reused goods resold on eBay. And so that wasn't Pierre's intent. He didn't do it for sustainability, but one of the derivative benefits of it was enormous. And then we've just tried to be responsible citizens in terms of how we lead our lives. Our campus in San Jose is the greenest campus in San Jose.
It was the first LEED certified.
First LEED certified, got 65,000 square feet of solar on top, and fuel cells fuel a third of the energy, Bloom fuel cells. And then we've taken that one step further. We now have a data center in Utah that can be completely off the grid, 100% driven, a data center, by fuel cells, again, Bloom fuel cells. So a data center running in what would be, in essence, carbon negative instead of carbon positive. So and the technology, some of the fuel cell technology and some of the technologies that are coming out are I think, going to enable even more and more for technology companies to take advantage of these in a way that's responsible for the business and for the environment.
So I wanted to touch on this for a moment because I think sometimes when people think about the digital economy and they think about e-commerce, they worry about the bricks and mortar, good old-fashioned retailers. But you're connecting, they are your clients, aren't they? You're connecting them to their online customers.
Absolutely. A surprisingly large number of eBay sellers are second generation or third generation families, business people. And it may have been that their parents, in their parents' generation, they could run the hardware store and make a living, or they could run the sporting goods store or the jewelry store in their local community and make a living. If you're a child of one of those business owners in many cases now, it's very hard to make a living just based in your local community. But if you go online, all of a sudden that single jewelry store in Omaha, Nebraska is reaching buyers all over the world. And so a lot of our sellers are, in essence, family businesses that may have 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 locations in the physical world and have a global footprint in the physical world, or in the digital world. And so I don't think it's either or. This is again, the notion that it has to be online or offline, local or global, right? It can be both, and technology can enable both.
But it's even big also. I mean, don't you work with Toys R Us and Home Depot?
Sure, large retailers, they want to reach consumers all over the world.
I mean, I think what's important is I think it's the baseball league is one of your clients, and I just want to say that we feel really good about this, and thank you for getting the Giants to the World Series. Thank you for scheduling.
Yeah. So.
Thank you for scheduling this dinner on a night when they're not playing.
We were talking earlier. Can you imagine if this dinner were tomorrow night? You'd be like, I got to get out of here. We got a game going on. So you have good timing.
Also, thank you for having a company called StubHub, so we can go to the game tomorrow night. We're grateful for that as well.
Still plenty of tickets available.
Okay, that would be the auction for tonight. McKinsey did a study recently. I hate to say this to a Bain guy, but McKinsey did this really great study lately. So
they're here too.
Yeah, what they argued, and you guys at Calcic, tell me if I'm wrong, but they argued that something like 75% of the benefit of the financial benefit of this digital economy is going to traditional businesses as well. So one is not starving the other, in fact, from what they'd argue. And in fact, I think the other thing was, it was something remarkable about how I think e-commerce is bigger than agriculture or energy industries in terms of revenues and sales. So it's really, I mean, it's quite remarkable. I want to move on to policy for a second, because we now have broadband in a lot of places we didn't have it before. We have mobile payment platforms. We have mobile phones just about everywhere, smartphones just about anywhere. But I don't know, is there anything that makes up for bad policy? Don't you still have to worry about countries with real protectionist barriers, et cetera, or that don't invest in their infrastructure that you need, the ports, the harbors, the highways that are needed to move goods?
Well, your world's more the policy world. I'm blessed with not having to live full life in the policy world, but where we really fight on the policy front is for small businesses, for these small entrepreneurs. And if you look at the burdens that are placed on a small business today, especially if you want to, say, be a global micro multinational. So we help them with shipping. We help them with customs. We help them deal with duties. We've been working with Secretary Pritzker to try to get lowering the boundaries or lowering the barriers for a small business to export globally. And so that's the area of policy that we're most focused on, is trying to enable more and more small business people to thrive.
Yeah. You also have a platform, if I'm right, called Main Street, which is an opportunity for us citizens to have more policy impact.
Absolutely. Well, our sellers, we have 25 million sellers around the world, and when an issue comes up, we had an issue where right now there's a drive to put internet sales tax on, which is not something that we're against, but the way it's being done is to create enormous burdens on small businesses. There's 7,500 tax jurisdictions in the United States that collect local sales tax. If you're a small business, and doing it is very difficult. And so this was being railroaded through by some large interests. And so we in essence, reached out to our selling community, and they generated 1 million letters to Congress in a week. That's still the... And they're from constituents, and Washington may be broken in many ways, but it's not when they receive 1 million letters. And so Congress, the House of Representatives, put the bill on hold and reopened discussions about how can we make it more friendly for small businesses.
So you happen to be pretty familiar with policy. You're married to Eileen and Donahoe, who has held, just as you have, truly consequential positions. These are two consequential careers going on side by side. She was the U.S. ambassador to the UN Human Rights Council, and she's now the global coordinator, is it, for Human Rights Watch? Head of Global Affairs. And Human Rights Watch, for those of you who, if there's anyone left who doesn't know Human Rights Watch, it's a truly exceptional organization. How have you figured out how to balance these two remarkable careers, plus have great kids who just don't think you're cool, if that's the worst thing you have to say?
They don't think I'm cool, and they know who's boss at home, and that's Mom. I don't know. I'd say we were lucky in two ways. We met early. We met in college. And our interests couldn't be more different. I mean, the truth is, Eileen doesn't really care about what I do, and I don't really care about what she does. But what I care about, what we've cared about from the beginning is the other person happy. And so when she listens to me at the end of the day, it's not listening to what happened, but what was my experience of it. And I think the same's been true reciprocally, and that's been the foundation for a relationship that I'm pretty lucky with.
That lasted until tonight.
Yes. No, I've made far bigger mistakes than that, trust me.
So in the end, John, you and I actually share a very special person influence in our lives, and that's a man named John Gardner, who used to be the president of Carnegie Corporation before I was at Carnegie, but still his everything about him, his essence was still there. He founded Common Cause, a remarkable man. What did he teach you, and how are you guided by him, both at Bain and here at eBay and in your future?
Well, as we were talking earlier, Jane, I in probably 20 years ago now, I came across a speech he had given. And in that speech, there was a phrase which sort of captured for me the essence of what I felt like my life's mission statement, my life's purpose was. And so I've kept it and I keep it in my wallet. It's a laminated card. And since I left my wallet in the car as part of the true digital economy, because you don't need a wallet anymore, you just need your mobile phone. But you had a copy, so if you want, I would just maybe just read this, because this to me captures so much of whether you're an eBay seller, whether you're someone here tonight, at least for me, what life's about. So bear with me. Meaning is not something you stumble across, like the answer to a riddle or a prize in a treasure hunt. Meaning is something you build into your own life. You build it out of your own past, out of your affections and loyalties, out of the experience of humankind as it's passed on to you. You build it out of your own talent and understanding, out of the things you believe in, out of the things and people you love, out of the values for which you're willing to sacrifice something. The ingredients are all there. You are the only one who can put them together into that unique pattern that will be your life. If you're able to do this in your life's work, then the particular balance of success and failure will be of less account.
John, thank you so much. I think we should.
Thank you.
John, we started the evening with you being toasted. I think we should lift our glass to the founders and CEOs who are in this room, who have, you're very modest about it, but they've learned hugely from you. And I'm sure from those words of John Gardner. So let's toast all of you.
Founders. Thank you.